Ross Tucker joining us on the program. Ross Tucker podcast. And let me see. What else do you have here? Countdown to the draft. That's You Better, You Bets. Countdown to the draft available on radio.com app. And Ross joins us on the program. Hopefully I got that introduction correct. But you like this McCaffrey deal?
So the introduction was great, Dan. Thank you. Great to talk with you. I like it for Christian McCaffrey.
Okay.
As for the Panthers, listen, Dan, he had unbelievable leverage here. I mean, unbelievable leverage. First of all, okay, they just lost Luke Kuechly to retirement. They cut Cam Newton, and they moved on from Greg Olsen. He's not just the face of the franchise, Dan. He's the only face on the team that the fans even recognize right now. So you've got your best player, and he is absolutely that, the face of the franchise with a new head coach. And the number one thing that Matt Rule does not want in August, when hopefully we have training camps and he's in front of his football team for the first time, the last thing he wants is for his best player and face the franchise to not be sitting in that room. And every day he's being asked by the media about the Christian McCaffrey holdout. And here's the thing. He was going to hold out, Dan. I mean, look, this is the first kid that ever skipped the bowl game, the Sun Bowl, 3 years ago. His dad played in the NFL. They know what the deal is. They know he's eligible for a contract now, and they know his unprecedented usage the last 2 years. He wasn't playing until he got this, and the Panthers knew it.
Yeah, but why don't I wait for one more year? Because I don't have to give it to him now. It's a 4-year and then that 5th year option, right?
Yeah, well, by that argument, if you're talking straight business of football, right, you could argue have him play this year out, then have him on the 5th year option in 2021, then franchise him in 2022. And if we're just talking about maximizing the business from the salary cap portion of it, then I get that. But the reality is he wasn't going to show up, Dan. And they know that. And they know that he knows the business. And they got the coronavirus going on. They're trying to have people renew their season tickets for a lot of different reasons. He sells over half the jerseys down there. They just decided, and by the way, we don't know what the structure of it is. It's 4 more years at the end of this deal, by the way. They didn't rip up his final 2 years. It goes through 2025. So they still have him for the next 2 years on that other deal. They just gave him some bonus money now, and let's see what the structure is. But they know that he wasn't going to show up, and neither the owner nor the head coach wanted to deal with that.
So it's a 6-year deal, and he'll be 29, I think, when this is done. Which, as much as when you're a running back and you're good, then they give you more touches, which puts you more in harm's way because you're so good. If you're a great defensive back, nobody throws it your way. But a running back, I got to load you up and give him 400 touches. At some point, can I just move him in? And, he becomes a slot receiver instead of a run. At some point, I have to try to get my money out of this, and that's what I think Carolina is going to face here at some point.
Yeah, and I did a lot of work on this, Dan, because I wrote about this 3 weeks ago for The Athletic. I wrote an open letter to Christian McCaffrey saying you have to hold out. Maybe they both read it. I don't know. But here's what's crazy. He played 93% of the snaps last year for Carolina. There's only 3 running backs that played more than 75% of the snaps. Yeah. Saquon, Zeke, and Leonard Fournette. And then you look at, Leonard Fournette was second with 88% of the snaps, but he played 138 fewer plays than McCaffrey. That's like 3 games. In fact, only Fournette and Zeke had more than 805 snaps, whereas McCaffrey had over 1050, which means he was on the field for over 250 more plays than everybody but Zeke and Fournette. Dan, that for most running backs, that's like 6 or 7 games. The guy played essentially an extra half season from every other guy at his position. They ran him into the ground last year. It's not just how many touches he had, it's just how many plays he's out there. Because even if you're not getting a carry, right, you still have to take on a blocker. You're still out there hitting somebody doing something. And his usage is off the charts. I've never seen anything like it, which is another reason why he was not going to play this year, especially with them having to use him again this way unless he got this money.
We're talking to Ross Tucker, former NFL lineman. So if McCaffrey wasn't going to show up, does that mean Mahomes or Watson or Dak aren't showing up either?
I think they should strongly consider it, especially Deshaun Watson, when you look at the disaster of a GM he has down there in Houston and what's going on with the Texans. You are eligible for a new contract after your third year. And these teams can all decide whether or not they want to try to string it out and play hardball like the Cowboys are. But then the players themselves on the other side can decide how they're going to handle it. It just came out that Dak's not going to show up because he's not a signed player for the virtual offseason. So now you're going to have all these meetings, and the starting quarterback's not a part of any of these meetings. Now, it almost benefits the Cowboys that it's virtual, because if they were really having these meetings with a new head coach and Mike McCarthy, who's going to have some tweaks to Kellen Moore's offense, and you're starting quarterbacks there, it's almost like, what's the point? Well, what's the point of even having the meetings if the guy who by far is the most important person to be in the meetings isn't there? So both sides have leverage that they can use. I think both Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. My suspicion, Dan, is that both Watson and Mahomes are waiting for the other one.
Yes.
To sign for $40 million first.
They're waiting for Dak, and then it'll be Watson and Mahomes to see who gets to 40 first.
I agree. I think that's what's going on there. Whereas McCaffrey realizes he cannot go out there. What's really interesting, too, Dan, about the running back position, there's a bunch of other guys in McCaffrey's draft class, right? So Aaron Jones from the Packers, Alvin Kamara, Saints, Dalvin Cook, Vikings, all very good players, similar to McCaffrey. Probably not quite as good as McCaffrey, but very similar. But they're not nearly in the same situation because none of those guys have the same usage. None of those guys are the faces of their franchise. They don't have a new head coach. So it's going to be really interesting because all of those guys, their agents are going to argue that they should get $16 million a year as well. And those teams are going to laugh. Like the Saints, Vikings, and Packers, they're not giving those guys close to what McCaffrey just got from the Panthers because the situations are so unique.
All right, I'll leave you with this. I started the top of this hour, and I said, look, this sounds crazy. Maybe it is crazy. But if I'm the Miami Dolphins, and I'm not completely sold on Tua, and I can't trade up to get Joe Burrow, why don't I just go into this season with Ryan Fitzpatrick, use those draft picks, maybe trade back for somebody who wants to move up, and then I sort of reassess where we are as a team. And are we in the sweepstakes for Trevor Lawrence next year? But if I have 3 first-round draft picks right now, if I can get another one and have 4 in the first round, I got wide receivers galore. I got offensive linemen galore. I got a couple of great defensive backs that maybe I can get 4 starters out of this draft, and I have Ryan Fitzpatrick if I'm not sold on Tua. What do you think of that philosophy?
Well, I agree with you that I don't think that they should take either Tua or Justin Herbert if they're not sold on them. I don't know that anybody would want to trade up to 5 at that point because I think the Chargers will just take either Herbert or Tua after that. So I don't know if they'd be able to trade down and get extra picks, maybe.
Okay.
But I think your point remains, which is don't force it. The irony of this whole thing, Dan, is that everyone you talk to in Miami, the plan was basically to be the worst team in the NFL this year so they could get Tua. But 2 things happened. Number 1, Tua got hurt and Joe Burrow was unbelievable. And number 2, for some unknown reason, they signed Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's like the anti-tanker. You don't get Fitzpatrick if you're trying to lose, okay? So, but what's crazy about it is because of Tua hurting his hip, and because of Fitzpatrick winning 5 games or whatever, they still might be able to get the guy that everybody thought they were going to get before the year started at number 1. They still might be able to get him at number 5. It's a shame. I wish it wasn't this way, Dan. But in 2 years of college football, the guy broke his hand, had 2 ankle surgeries that Alabama invented that I'd never heard of before, had a hip surgery. I would love to talk to like an insurance actuary dude. What are the odds that he's going to stay healthy in the NFL?
I know.
They're not good.
I know. Those guys who are injured in college, they get injured in the pros. It follows them in there. It just does. There's a track record with them. Hey, it's great to talk to you as always. We appreciate your time and great stuff. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. See you guys.
That's Ross Tucker.